It starts as a hint of breath against the glass, a puff on the far passenger side of the windshield. It fogs up the corner with a small film of white that he can see out of the corner of his eye. He quickly hits the stick for the wipers, watching them dance across the windshield and just barely miss it. He hits it again for good measure, content that a tiny edge is sliced off with the movement. The road around him is dark, no street lamps, and barely anything within range of his headlights. There hasn't been a car in sight since he started driving, but he tells himself that's normal for how early in the morning it is. The sun hasn't awoken yet, so the rest of the world is still in bed. Besides, early risers typically love the emptiness of the road, right? They want to avoid pesky things like rush hour or the first snow of the season that the weatherman warned them about. Still, his eyes search the road ahead for some sign of life, some distraction from that little puff of white on the windshield. A traffic light. A deer. There has to be something besides a barren street and trees. There's nothing. And now, that puff is creeping along the bottom edge of the glass, little ice crystals forming and glinting with the tiniest of light. He reaches over and turns up the heat as high as he can, moving the other dial to the defroster, full blast. The air hisses for a second, the car not ready to respond. Then he can hear the roar of the air shoved through the vents. Within seconds, the small ice crystals and white spot of haze retract, pulling back as hot, dry air fills the cabin of the car. He breathes a sigh of relief. Trees around him whip by, their few orange and red leaves taunting him. In the darkness they seem like a wall, reaching high above his car and interlocking along the sides of the road in an effort to keep him from all signs of humanity and hope. There are still no streetlights, no signs of a city in the distance or a quiet suburban neighborhood. All he's seen is the inside of his car and that damn mist that has thankfully evaporated from the heat. No matter. He's sure he'll be back in civilization in a few miles. Even with the lack of mile markers or signs indicating what city he's approaching. Live on the edge of town, they said. It'd be nice and peaceful, they said. With fumbling hands, he turns on the radio, mindlessly flipping through stations to give himself something to fill the silent darkness. Inane morning chatter with radio DJs working at half a tank because they know no one else is listening. News that makes his paranoia feel insignificant because here he is, frightened by a blip of fog on the glass, when there are people fighting for their right to exist. He settles on a station that plays old songs that dropped off the edge of the earth ages ago. The nostalgic tunes calm his panicking brain, and he starts to relax, long years of habit taking over driving.